Okay, so this is Bible study from Matthew 14, verses 1 through 21. And the text for today says, At that time, Herod the Tetrarch heard the reports about Jesus, and he said to his attendants, This is John the Baptist. He has risen from the dead. That is why miraculous powers are at work in him. Now Herod had arrested John and bound him and put him in prison because of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife. For John had been saying to him, It is not lawful for you to have her. Herod wanted to kill John, but he was afraid of the people because they considered John a prophet. On Herod's birthday, the daughter of Herodias danced for the guests and pleased Herod so much that he promised on oath to give her whatever she asked. Prompted by her mother, she said, Give me here on a platter the head of John the Baptist. The king was distressed, but because of his oaths and his dinner guests, he ordered that her request be granted, and had John beheaded in the prison. His head was brought in on a platter and given to the girl, who carried it to her mother. John's disciples came and took his body and buried it. Then they went and told Jesus. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, This is a remote place, and it is already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food. Jesus replied, They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, they answered. Bring them here to me, he said, and he directed the people to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and looked up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. All right, so that's our text for today, and it could have been broken down a little bit more. We could have gone a little farther, but here we are. Number one, don't forget that you can download PDF copies of this Bible study at www.abqnaz.org/alive so that you can follow along with us as we study this text. Number one says, What did we talk about in last week's Bible study in 13:53 through 58? So that is the parable. I'm sorry, not parables. There was lots of parables. That is when Jesus said, Only in his own hometown and amongst his own people is a prophet without honor. And he wasn't able to do any miracles. So he was there in his hometown in our last Bible study. Took a very short piece of text. Number two, what do we learn now in 14:1 and 2? A. Herod the Tetrarch heard the reports about Jesus. That's true. And then Herod said to his attendants, This is John the Baptist. He has risen from the dead. That is why miraculous powers are at work in him. So a couple things. First of all, both of those are true right there in the text. Second of all, there were multiple Herods. Early in my ministry, I remember a time when I said, this is the same Herod that did this. None of the Herods were nice guys. None of the Herods were particularly friendly to Jesus or to the Jews or to the people of God in general. Um, so, you know, but historically, there was the tetrarch refers to a fact that the area had been divided up in 3 parts and given to basically 3 kings who ruled different portions of this area. There was also a different Herod that I believe at one time ruled the whole area. But Herod the Tetrarch was one. They were all related, I believe. But Herod the Tetrarch was the one that um, only ruled part. Um, so we hear then that John the Baptist, Herod tells his attendants that he thinks Jesus is John the Baptist raised from the dead. Surely he must be. Which sounds kind of crazy because Jesus and John the Baptist were about the same age. They were um, cousins, we know, and we can. There's stories in the Gospels about um, John the Baptist jumping in his mother's womb when she came in contact with Mary, who had Jesus in her own womb. But Jesus wasn't a phantom or a figment, or Jesus existed before John the Baptist was beheaded. So none of this makes sense, but it is fear that's driving Herod's thoughts. It's fear and guilt. And we don't know why as of verse 2. We find out why in the next part of the text. So Matthew, the author, tells us this is what Herod the Tetrarch thought. And then he says, now let me tell you why he thought that. This is what happened. So number 3 says, why did Herod think this according to 14:3 through 12? Well, I think guilt would be the best answer. So that's not right in the text, but I think it pretty much is the best answer. But why was he feeling guilty? Now this is what's in the text. B. Herod was having Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, and John had told him it was not lawful for him to have her. So it says right there, John had been saying to him, it is not lawful for you to have her. Um, I think we all know what's going on here. Basically, um, Herod has taken as a wife or as a pseudo wife, as a girlfriend or whatever, his brother's wife. And that's not a good idea. It's not lawful according to Jewish law. But Herod's doing it, so John the Baptist had stood and declared this. Um, it doesn't tell us. So I would have loved to say married or something like that instead of having. But it doesn't say that. What it says is he had his brother's wife. And I think the implications there are clear. C. Herod had arrested John the Baptist and bound him and put him in prison. That's true. D. Herod had wanted to kill John, but was worried about the people because they considered John a prophet. So, one thing that's important to understand is that the Roman rulers of the time often did things not because they were right or not wrong. They didn't make decisions about what to do based on what was right or wrong, but they made decisions very often about public opinion. We know this as we come to the end of the book of Matthew and the Gospels, and we learn that Jesus was tried for crimes he didn't commit, and the Roman ruler did not find anything to hold against Jesus, and he tried to release him. And he said, "Well, I got an idea. Why don't I release him instead of this rabble rouser that's creating riots?" And they said, "No, give us that guy. Crucify Jesus." And so and then Pilate washes his hands of it, meaning that he's doing this not because he thinks it's right or he thinks that's what should be done, but because that's what the people wanted, and he didn't want to have a riot on his hands. He didn't want the people rising up against him. So very often, the Roman governors of the time made decisions not based on what was right and wrong, but based on what gave them the less problems as they governed the people, because these were not righteous governors. These were people who had been given political positions because of who their friends and family were. And so they've been put in control. Rome governed a huge part of the known world, and they they had some kind of family or friend connection that got them this posting in this position. They weren't qualified at it. They weren't good at it. They didn't even want to do it for the good of the people. They just wanted a position that gave them wealth and power. And so then the best way to lose wealth and power is for there to be some sort of uprising because the people are mad. And that gets back to the emperor or whoever is next in command, and um, and then they would lose their posting. So their sole desire was to hold on to wealth and power, was to hold on to their position. So they did things very often by what the people thought. So that being said, it wouldn't have been right for him to have killed John the Baptist for saying what he said. But it would have been pretty standard practice for a ruler to kill somebody that spoke out against them or said they were doing the wrong thing. So he could have done that, but doing that was going to rile up the people because they believed John was a prophet. So that's a lot of explanation to get through that, what he's doing there. On Herod's birthday, Herodias' daughter danced for the guests and pleased Herod so much that he promised to give her whatever she wanted. Now, I don't know, the whole thing sounds really creepy to me. Herod is her uncle slash stepfather. Um, And so he has this young girl dance in front of all his powerful friends, and they all got pretty excited, enjoyed the whole thing, and you know, stepdaddy uncle was pleased, and so he said, "I'll give you whatever you want," and all of that sounds really creepy to me. So he did not expect this to happen. He did not expect something to be asked for by this young girl that would cause him problems. But her mother, his lover, um, suggested that her daughter um, asked for John's head on a platter. It doesn't say silver. I put silver in there. That's a saying that we have, served up on a silver platter. I don't know if it was silver. They were rich. It may have been something nice. Uh, but it doesn't say silver. But his head on a platter. That's what she wanted. Mama wanted, so the daughter asked for it. And Herod did as she asked, despite his distress. He was distressed by it because of the implications for the people, but he also had all these people in front of him. He just made a promise, and he didn't want to lose face in front of them, so he followed through with the promise and he gave the order. And then the girl took the head and carried it to her mother. So that is like a yummy, you know, cutesy family moment there, um, where she presents a severed head to her mother. Um, yeah, CYFD is going to have a field day with this. This is so much wrong with this. But number 4, have you ever responded harshly to someone who told you the truth about your actions? I'm guessing none of us have beheaded anybody. But um, if somebody comes and says, you know, what you're doing is not right, um, our natural tendency, particularly in the flesh, in other words, we were born into sin. We're selfish, prideful people from birth. And unless God has done something about that, then when somebody corrects us, like fire burns inside of us. Especially if they do it in front of people and it embarrasses us. Um, Now, I'll say that I do believe that God can change our hearts, and I do believe that we can get to the place where we accept correction graciously, and we stop worrying so much about what people think of us and more about what God thinks of us. Um, but that doesn't mean that the temptation to be upset goes away when perhaps we're not sure somebody corrected us with the right heart or in the right setting or situation. So we might still be tempted and have to wrestle with that. I could confess to being tempted to be frustrated at people that bring correction to me and wonder if that was done in the right setting. But if we respond harshly, and ultimately we know that what was said is true, is right, and really is from God, then how does that make us feel afterward? And I would say consistently, um, if there's any sensitivity to the Spirit of God in our life, we're going to feel bad after we've responded harshly to correction. We tend towards defensiveness so often that we will argue even when we know we're wrong sometimes. Number five, how according to 14:13 did Jesus respond? So it says when Jesus heard, and we're kind of going to a new story, but when Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. This is on his cousin. So humanly, we understand there's a connection and there's familial care. Second, he has declared about John that John was um, the person that was sent to prepare the way, the voice of one calling in the desert. And so Jesus knows that this is an instrument of God, a person of God, anointed by God, doing the work of God. And then further, um, somebody being killed for telling the truth surely only makes it clearer that his time is coming too. So what does Jesus do is he withdraws by boat to a solitary place. He tries to get away from everybody. He needs time to grieve. He needs time to be able to process what's happened. The second part of this says, how did that work out for him according to 14:14a? When Jesus landed, he saw a large crowd. The crowds heard what was going on, where he was going, and they, he might be crossing a lake or something like that, a sea, and they went by foot and met him on the other side. Um, that kind of defeats the point of taking a boat across and getting away from everybody. So he was not able to get away alone to process his grief. And I'll just say, for me, if I'm an introvert. I know you don't think I am. I know you think I run my mouth a lot. Surely I'm an extrovert. I if I'm with people for long periods of time, it drains me, and I need to get away into a room alone. Usually these days, I can make it to get home. If my wife on a Sunday schedules lunch out with people, maybe I can make it through that, but I got to prepare myself. So if it's unexpected, that's not great. Um, my wife's an extrovert, so she sometimes does that sort of thing because she'd rather have dinner with people than go. Like I like to go turn on the TV, turn down the lights in the house, and spend the afternoon with nobody on Sunday afternoon. But that doesn't, I don't always get that chance. Um, and I'll say I get more and more irritable as I'm with people longer without the chance to um, recharge, recoup my energy. If something so emotional like the beheading of a loved one, I mean, the death of a loved one in general, perhaps is easier to process, but if something like that happened, I need time. Give me time. Give me space. And I'll be honest with you. I hope that I would respond to everybody in Christ's strength. But if I need time and space and you chase me down and you meet me outside the back, like there have been times when I was an associate pastor, not recently, I've learned to deal with it. I had an office and I had an office without a window. And I would go in the office and shut the door and leave the lights out so nobody could tell I was in there and sit in the dark until I had time to recharge. Um, in the middle of a Sunday morning service or something that was going on, I've had to do that. And let me just tell you, if you find yourself outside my door when I've intentionally tried to get away, all bets are off. And whatever happens at that point, um, I I don't really feel responsible for. I've done my best to make sure that I respond as Christ-like as possible by getting away and getting into prayer and getting alone and whatever else. And you chase me down anyway. You I don't know. This is not very pastoral. This is not very Christ-like. What I'm going to say, but maybe you deserve what's coming to you. And I'll commit to doing my best. If you commit to understanding chasing me around the lake might not be the best tactic. Um, Third part, what did Jesus do according to 14:14b? He had compassion on them and healed their sick. That's why I say probably what I was saying, not very Christ-like, and I will spend my time praying to be more Christ-like and to get better at dealing with it when people don't give me my time and space to recharge. Um, but I will say I have definitely sent calls to voicemail when we just got done with a meeting or an event or something, and I am drained and I am ready to recharge. And you didn't talk to me during the meeting. You didn't talk to me during the time when people are around. You didn't talk to me when I was at the church, and I'm halfway home and you call me. You might get sent to voicemail. I'm just saying. But Jesus healed the people. He set aside his pain, set aside, I mean, from a worldly perspective and even, pastoral, what we would be counseled to do in terms of our own emotional and mental health. I know we would be told we need boundaries. We would be told that we need to um, be able to get away and recharge. But what we see Jesus doing is setting aside his own feelings, setting aside his own what he wished had happened, and instead caring for the people all around him. And so I think I might, no, I've come a long way, but I think I still might need work on this. Number 6, what happened as evening approached according to 14:15 through 21? A, the disciples told Jesus to send the crowds away so they could buy food since they were in a remote place. So they followed him all the way to this place, and they're far away from town. He was trying to get away. It's remote on purpose, and they followed him there. And he went ahead and healed their sick, and he went ahead and interacted with them, and probably taught him. It doesn't say that in this particular part of the passage, but maybe. And the disciples said, "Hey, they need to go away. They're going to starve to death out here because they're not thinking of their own well-being." B. Jesus responded, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." I think, honestly, the disciples were feeling the way I'm talking about, and they weren't feeling very Christ-like at the moment, and they were thinking, this sounds like a good, justifiable excuse for us to send them home. That sounds very selfless. We're worried about their ability not to starve to death. We're not at all worried about our desire to get alone. And the questions that are in our mind, that if John the Baptist was beheaded, are we going to be killed too? And those sorts of things. C, the disciples replied that they only had 5 fish, 5 loaves of bread, and 2 fish. We don't have enough. We can't give them anything to eat. D, Jesus told them to bring the loaves and fish to him. E, Jesus directed the people to sit down in the grass. Yes. F, Jesus gave thanks and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples, who gave them to the people. Yes. G, they all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. See, I don't know how big these loaves of bread were, but 12 baskets full seems like more than 5 loaves of bread. Seems like they had more left over than they had at the beginning. And then H, the number who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. So this is the feeding of 5,000. This is a big miracle. Number 7, the disciples had reasonable thought processes, didn't they? Yeah, I think they did. I think reasonable, wise, thoughtful. God gave us brains. We should use them, right? All of this applies to what the disciples were suggesting. The second part says, why do you think Jesus didn't listen to their advice? Let me just say, I would say this. Jesus had something to teach the people. He wanted to help the people. He wanted to heal the people. But I think he also needed to show. See, he was raising up these disciples to do the things that he was doing, and even greater thing. He was raising people up for ministry. And I think he knew their hearts and why they were really wanting to send the people home. And I think he was trying to teach them that in the moment when you don't think you have enough for a little bit more time with people, God can give you the strength. God can help me not blow up on you. He can give me the strength to. I think Jesus was trying to teach the disciples that all of these wise thoughts are one thing, but if God's really calling you to care for these people, then He can give you the strength needed to do this right now. And then the third part says, should we consider this when we are thinking about the situations of life? And I would say yes. We should consider that God is able, that Jesus can work it out in our lives if we're being asked to do something that's a step beyond. And I'm not sure that feeding the people was the main thing here. I'm convinced, based on the context of the story, that in this story, the main point is they needed time to grieve. They needed time alone. And the people had invaded. The people had not given them that time alone. And what seemed like the wise response and wise thing to do was not what Jesus did. And he showed that he had the power to give them all they needed to do what was required of them at the moment. despite what they felt like they were capable. And so I don't know that it's really about loaves and fishes as much as it is about his provision for us in the time when he's calling us to serve others and we don't have any more to give. But he does. He can multiply.